Here we are, another video for His Word Unveiled. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are in the book of Job. We are going to hit chapters 10 and 11 today. So this will probably be one of our shorter videos, but I want to make sure that we get through all of these. I thought about clumping a bunch of them up at once, but it's okay if we have a shorter video here or there. Maybe it'll give you a break and more time to dig into other things more, or get caught up in your reading with Job, or whatever it may be. It's all good, and we're running with it today. Father, we thank you. I just pray that you have your way, that you speak. Lord, we love you. We trust you, and we choose to take you at your word. Be with us today, and open up our eyes and our hearts to receive all you have for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. Go ahead and hit that pause button and read through chapters 10 and 11 all on your own. Read word for word. Get it sunk in. Take your time. Embrace all of it. And then come on back and we will discuss. We will quickly recap and go through what exactly is going on in these chapters. So here we go. Okay, so chapter 10 continues. Job had just replied in the last video that we watched in the last chapter. Job had just replied to Bildad. So he has heard from Eliphaz and Bildad. They are both speaking the same message, as in their sin is causing Job's suffering. And Job is still remaining in this state of woe is me, all of this suffering. I don't deserve this. I've been a righteous man, so I really don't deserve this. And I've been thrown in the pit, so this isn't on me, but this stuff is still happening, and I don't understand why, and I want an answer. I just hate my life. All of this just being stuck, allowing suffering to surround and soak and consume everything that he's feeling and seeing, being stuck in there, allowing pride. We saw in his previous responses, allowing pride to start showing through, and all of this, just defending himself, just so in this defense mechanism, and I don't deserve this, and here's why, and here's what I've been. So those are in the previous chapters. In 10, he continues in, he will respond a little bit to Bildad, and then he's speaking to the Lord. So just this whole questioning of why was I even born, choosing to remain in this suffering. So we see right away in chapter 10, he starts off, I loathe my own life. I will give full vent to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. Right off the bat, he is saying, there's no shame. Just in this confidence of, I will complain. I will vent this out. I will remain bitter in my soul because I don't deserve this, because this is no fun, and I've done nothing wrong, but this is all happening to me. So this lifting almost this arrogance, and I will complain, I will vent, I will be bitter, I will, because I don't deserve it. In verse 2, he says, I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you contend with me. So he is, again, this arrogance we see, and he's just demanding answers from God. He's demanding to know why this is happening, why he's condemning him when he's been righteous, when this hasn't been an issue. He wants answers, and he's approaching God with such, you just see it and sense that arrogance. Jumping down to verse 7, it says, according to your knowledge, so he's speaking to the Lord, according to your knowledge, I am indeed not guilty, yet there is no deliverance from your hand. Your hands fashioned and made me altogether, and would you destroy me? Remember now that you have made me as clay, and would you turn me into dust again? So he is coming at God with this, acknowledging that God is his creator, is his God, that he took the time to fashion him and create every detail about him and his creation. And then he's saying, so you made all this good, and now you're just going to destroy it? Now you're just going to take it out? Now you're just going to say, oh, that was my creation, it's not worth much, I'm just wiping it out? He's just approaching God with that, and wanting God to question, almost just elevating himself so that he can question God and saying, have you even thought about this? Like, why would you create me and then just destroy me? Why Why is this happening? Again, just demanding answers and laying his claim, defending himself and saying, I don't deserve this. This whole defense for himself. We see down in 14, if I sin, then you would take note of me and would not acquit me of my guilt. If I am wicked, woe to me. So he's automatically saying, if I'm guilty, okay, fine. Let my life look this way. Have all this stuff taken from me. If I am guilty, so be it. But then he goes in, and if I am righteous, I dare not lift my head. I am sated with disgrace and conscious of my misery. So he is saying, I'm in the same boat, whether I'm guilty or I'm not. Even if I'm righteous, even though I am righteous, he's speaking, I can't even lift my head because of this disgrace, shame, this misery that I'm in, even being righteous. So he is just saying, I'm no different than any guilty man. This shame is still on me. This suffering is still on me, and it's not right. So he is just speaking this. He is letting this just pour out of his mouth and speaking this, making sure that God is aware of the position that he's in and being righteous, but this stuff still happening. The same stuff that would happen to a guilty person. And he is making sure that he is pleading his case and that the Lord knows what's going on. Like God wouldn't know, but that's where he's at, and that's what he's pushing. We see that hardcore in chapter 10. Moving into, he continues to go into the woe is me and all this is horrible and miserable. Just won't let off of it. In chapter 10, we go into then Zophar's counsel. So this is the third friend who is coming in, and we're gonna have a little counseling session with Job, and I hear him keep speaking all of this. He starts right off. It says in the first verse, then Zophar the Naamathite answered, shall a multitude of words go unanswered, and a talkative man be acquitted? Shall your boasts silence men, and shall you scoff and none rebuke? For you have said, my teaching is pure, and I am innocent in your eyes. But would that God might speak and open his lips against you, and show you the secrets of wisdom, for sound wisdom has two sides. Know then that God forgets a part of your iniquity. So he is coming out and saying, you're just talking and talking and talking, but he is ready to move as soon as you say, hey, here's my sin. This is sin. Take care of it. So quit your talking and let's do something about it. This is what it is. This is the reason, so do something with it. It's your sin that's causing the suffering. So this same message is coming out of Zophar. In verse 11, for he knows false men, and he sees iniquity without investigating. So he's saying all this talking that you're doing, Job, you're just blah, 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 blah. All these responses, all this, I am righteous, I've done this, so God, why don't you make sense of this? Why don't you tell me what's going on? He's saying all that talking is nothing, because it says he knows false men. He sees iniquity without investigating. So he's saying, talk all you want, Job, but God doesn't have to do this intense investigating. He sees a false man, and that's what's going on in your life. He sees the sin, the iniquity in your life. So all this talking is getting you nowhere. All this arrogant talk that you're this and that is getting you nowhere. Just admit your sin, because God sees it anyway. In verse 13, if you would direct your heart right and spread out your hand to him, if iniquity is in your hand, put it far away, and do not let wickedness dwell in your tents, then indeed you could lift up your face without moral defect. So we even see he is replying directly to what Job spoke in chapter 10. In verse 15 of chapter 10, if I am wicked, woe to me. And if I am righteous, I dare not lift my head. I am sated with disgrace and conscious of my misery. So he's stating that shame, that disgrace that he's feeling. And Zophar responds in verse 15. So, that's interesting. Chapter 10, 15. And then Zophar replies directly to that in verse 15. Sorry, I'm a number person. Pick up on those things. He says, then indeed you could lift up your face without moral defect. So Job is saying, I dare not lift up my head. And he replies, then indeed you could lift up your face without moral defect, if you come out and deal with this sin. If you acknowledge that this is because of sin. If you come to grips with that sin is causing this. then he goes in and he says, and you would be steadfast and not fear. You would forget your trouble. As the waters that have passed by, you would remember it. Your life would be brighter. Darkness would be like the morning. Then you would trust because there is hope. And you would look around and rest securely. You would lie down and none would disturb you. And many would entreat your favor. So he's saying if you do come to grips with this sin, then all this will come to pass. Your life will be smooth. You'll regain your wealth and you will be restored and all of these things will happen. So he's saying all this could happen, but then he comes back to, but that's not you. You are a false man. You are full of wickedness. You are doing wrong. That's what is causing this. And in verse 20, that's how he finishes this chapter. He says, but the eyes of the wicked will fail, and there will be no escape for them, and their hope is to breathe their last. So, wow, right? What a good friend. He just continues, and it's just pushed on and pushed into Job, this message. And Job is trying to deal with all of this loss and suffering that he's dealing with on top of this distorted message that these friends are giving them. They're speaking of the goodness of God. They're speaking of what God could do, but the way that they're relaying it and how they are condemning and putting this judgment to Job that it has to be sin. They're almost taking just God's place and speaking this like it is true, like this needs to be done, like this is what it is. It's just sad, it's just sad. And all three friends are telling Job the same message, and without their even realizing it, we see that they're pushing Job into even more pride. They're speaking this message like, okay, Job, you have the power to make this right. You are empowered to simply acknowledge the sin and turn away from it, and then your life will be so smooth. You have that power to make your life better, to make your life full of just goodness, this easy, things are well because you're living righteously. So they're speaking this empowerment, and I can only imagine Job grabbing a hold of this message and being like, yeah, I do have the power to make that right, and almost like, yeah, starting to elevate himself and saying, so I seriously don't deserve this. Like, if this power is within me, in my hands, in my own grasp, and taking it deeper and saying, okay, if sinners, because my friends think that this is because of this sin and all of this wicked living that I'm doing, this iniquity within myself, thinking that. So he, I can just imagine him thinking, okay, if someone who is guilty can change their life, can make their life smooth, can bring about this just nice, easy life, that everything is going well. If a sinner, someone who's guilty can do that, then me, not guilty, and my righteousness and being blameless, how much more smooth should my life be? How much easier should this be? How much more should I be receiving? So almost just pushing him into this more pride, more of this, I deserve more, I deserve, yes, and lifting him up. So it's just interesting and really a good thing to think about and reflect about in how we are approaching others. How do we approach people in their suffering, even just in general? How are people being approached by us? What are we driving them into? Are we, by the words we speak and by how we are coming up to them, or what we're speaking into their life, are we pushing them into pride? Are we pushing them into fear? Are we pushing them into jealousy? Are we pushing them into selfishness? Are we pushing people without even knowing it, without those intentions being, but by how we are approaching them, are we pushing them into the things of the flesh? Or are we pushing them into the arms of Jesus? What message are we relaying? What are we speaking? What are we ultimately drawing them into? Are we allowing them to be reminded and full of the love of God? Are we reminding them that God is a good God, that he does love them, that he does have a plan for them, that there's always purpose, encouraging them to hear the voice of the Lord, whatever he's speaking, not coming out and saying, this is what's going on, and this is what you need to take care of, and this is how you need to do. We can't play God. We need to to speak God. We need to speak life so that they are drawn into the arms of the Lord and not pushed into anything of the flesh, not pushed into more pride, into these cases where they want to dwell in suffering, where they are striving and getting desperate for people to understand and to hear and to whatever it may be. Really reflect on that, and these chapters challenge me to do that, and really thinking about my approach and thinking the way that we're approached and the way that we even respond to that. Are we going to be Job, and are we going to hear the voice of men, pulling us into more pride, into more suffering, digging us deeper and deeper and sulking there? Or are we willing to, in everything that's said and done to us, are we going to hear the voice of the Lord? Are we going to trust? Are we going to step back and just wait on him and wait in his goodness, believing who he says he is? Just interesting things to grab a hold of and run with. So I encourage you again still, if you so desire, read through those chapters again, get more and more of a grip on what it is and what God chooses to speak in us. So that is where we're at. That is what I got for you today out of chapters 10 and 11. We will just continue in the book of Job and hear more and more of these conversations and these friends coming back and what they're saying and how it starts to intensify and get deeper and deeper into just some really intense stuff, and ultimately just taking us into seeing God's plan and seeing his purpose and seeing how this unfolds into just some incredible transformation and the way that God's hands are all over it. So thank you for walking with me today, and I will see you soon.